Hey, Elizabeth.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, and you can hear me.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used this last year, I guess, Hopin, but I hadn't used it otherwise. So, and the platforms we used for other conferences were very glitchy. So, relief.
What's up, y'all?
That's why I was worried.
Hey, Drew.
Hey.
Are you saying that, have you got glitches?
No, I was saying
no.
Not with this one, just with other platforms like ARAs and.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been really good.
ARA should take some lessons from us.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Hi, Angela.
Hey, how are you, Jesse?
Hi, Elizabeth.
There we go. Hey, Melinda. Hey, Tiffany.
Hello, Drew. Hey, everybody.
One note of heads up on ours, y'all. We've got 3 teachers that at the end are going to show their action research, and we actually have them create Google. I checked this with David and everything. Google Meets, just where like for 5 minutes they're going to put it in the chat where people can bounce in. Is that okay with you guys? Hey, Amber.
So I think since the ARC team, since we're in the second presentation, maybe we could leave the moderation area for now. So you can hit the leave button at the top, and then we can jump back in when it's our turn to present. Because I think we're going second.
Oh, that makes sense. I didn't do that in my last one, but we probably should have. Erin, are you our session lead here? Is that right?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay, cool. I don't know who our session lead is. No, it's no problem.
Yeah, I think the session chair is Joanna Smith, but I don't see her on yet.
I thought so too. Okay,
Yeah.
Joanna. I was getting a little confused because Henrico, we did too, and Joanna did she did ours this morning. So I was like, I thought she was both, but I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Thanks, Jesse.
Sure. And Erin, if you hit the leave button at the top, you can jump off the main screen and then come back in when it's time for our presentation.
We'll wait a minute for Joanna, and then either way, she's also an admin, and I think maybe in building today. So Jesse, if it's I can kick us off too. So we can wait a minute, and then I'm happy to kick us off.
That sounds great. Let's get going.
Okay, sweet. Let's go ahead and do that. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome. We're really excited to have everyone here for our session 8, a topic I know that a lot of us are passionate here on the presentation side, and we hope that you guys are too in attending. What I'll do is our crew, I'll let you guys, we can just kind of just do our introductions really quickly. So I'm Drew Baker. I'm an educational specialist in professional learning for Henrico County that got to work with this initiative. We'll talk with you guys shortly. I'm also adjunct faculty at the University of Richmond, and my research areas of interest are in adult learning, student engagement, student motivation, and also professional learning, because that's what I'm doing in my current role. So I'll let Angela and then Tiffany, Melinda, and Amber just do a quick intro on who you guys are.
Hey, everybody. I'm Angela Stewart. I work in professional learning with Drew Baker and had the honor of working with the wonderful presenters that we have with us today. I'll pass to Tiffany.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Tiffany Stevens. I'm an exceptional education instructional coach with the Department of School Quality in Henrico County. And I also feel pretty at home here because I do a little bit of work with the Petersburg Partnership through VCU. So this is exciting. Hi, Alma. Pass to Melinda.
Oh, Melinda, go ahead and hit that unmute button. Okay, cool. Don't worry about it. Hit me up in the chat. We can help you out. There's a, you got to hit the microphone button on there by video, and you might even want to log out, log back in. Maybe we've got a second. Amber, we'll see. We'll have you go.
Sure. I'm Amber Fugate. I am an innovative learning coach in Henrico County on the elementary level.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get going. I will screen share and get us going. And then Jesse, thumbs up on this. Just we're going 20, 20, 20, correct on this. So we go for 20, you guys go for 20, and 20 for Q&A. Awesome. Thank you. All right. I am going to share our screen, and I'll just keep our own time too. So we'll move on. We'll do the tag team handoff at 11:50. And we'll let y'all know that at the end of our presentation, we'll do a 5-minute where you guys can actually go in and hear from these teachers. So we are talking about elevating teacher leaders through action research. It's something that, man, we just really love, we really believe in, and we're excited to share. Here's our awesome team, so you can kind of see what everybody is doing here and what they teach as well. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to my colleague, Angela Stewart, who's going to talk about this part of our Aspiring Leader Academy, which is really the vehicle for this action research work that we'll get into a little down the line.
Yes, thanks, Drew. Before there was the action research work, there was Aspiring Leader Academy, which was really developed to support the development of leaders across the division, specifically in the admin track. And so to the side of the screen, you'll see we started out with an administrative track where teachers who were interested in becoming administrators joined for a leadership program to help groom them and provide them structure to be successful as leaders in Henrico. And then we realized that we had a lot of teachers who really wanted to serve in leadership capacities, but did not necessarily see themselves working as administrators. And so we developed a parallel track called the Teacher Leader Track in our Aspiring Leader Academy. Both of these look at teacher leadership standards, and we decided that there was a really strong program that we had been using to teach the different leadership standards. And it really took a lot of time, and it seemed a little bit isolated and individual, but we wanted to put it all together. Enter project-based learning. And Drew, if you want to click to the next slide, what we looked at were how we could use the teacher leadership standards to kind of weave them together into one meaningful learning experience for the participants in the Leadership Academy, and make sure that they saw how everything fit together, that it was autonomous, that it had relevance to the work they were doing. And so we looked at project-based learning as an inspiration for how to pull together the standards. And that brought us to the action research piece that we've included in our ALA program now. And Drew worked to develop this action research model within our division. And so I'll let him take away what that looks like for our leadership track.
Awesome. I'm going to make sure my sound's on. Just double boom. Okay, we're good. All right. Yeah. So I think that that's a really important point to stress. And Angela, when we were having this conversation, it was really cool. Like we basically knew, right, coming back to here, we knew that we wanted to teach the teacher leader standards, but how could we do it in a way that wasn't just sit and get PL? And so Angela brilliantly was like, well, what if we did project-based learning for adults? And the way that we're doing that are basically our andragogy, our instructional method for teaching adults was to do action research. And this is something we're very, very proud of. Looking at who's here, I think everybody actually has a pretty good understanding of what is action research. I mean, Jesse taught me what action research was at VCU. But I think I really like this definition. This is from one of the works that we consult a lot. I think Sager and Williams, so many people have been publishing about action research since the 50s, but I really like Sager and Williams because they do a nice job bringing it down to what I think is digestible for practitioners. And so the big thing is when we're doing action research, we are going through inquiry, and it's the people who are going through the inquiry are the ones who can actually use the research. And it's really focused on making things better in the future, which is, of course, just such an important part of public ed and what we're doing. Man, I mean, there really couldn't be anything easier than doing a quick lit review on why action research matters. But here's some of the things that I think is really important, especially the empowering teacher piece. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody that this is I think we're really at a turning point, a tipping point. Maybe a cliff, maybe it's the top of a mountain on teacher empowerment and teacher autonomy. Action research is one of, yes, the best ways to connect theory to practice, which we're very passionate about here with MERC. It makes instruction better for kids, but also really empowers teachers and helps them grow in an authentic way. We know that one of the keys to action research is teachers have to buy in and they need a lot of support. We see this in the literature, and man, every time I take a group through action research, I think that is echoed over and over. Is just how much support is taken to get people to the level where eventually they can start going through it on their own. It also can increase rates of teacher retention, which I know is a big area of focus for everyone in Central Virginia. And I thought this was really cool, especially in high burnout schools. And then finally, it can be a huge boon to teacher efficacy. So a teacher's belief that they can actually have an impact with kids. And again, we bring back to that autonomy piece. This is kind of some of the work from MERC. Is everybody benefits from action research because the teacher is growing and they feel supported. The school benefits because as action research projects are happening, they impact kids, but also the school is gaining a teacher who, like we say, knows how to fish. We're getting an instructor who is supported in undergoing their own inquiry to impact whatever they're passionate about or whatever the need is. The division, we benefit a ton because we have all of these basically labs of learning, and we have these autonomous teacher leaders who can find problems and solve them themselves. And this is a great part, and why we're super passionate about our partnership with MERC is the research community benefits, because you have people on the ground level taking in ideas and constructs and models and theories from researchers who are doing this full time and putting it into practice in a way that only they can. So here's one of the things is I think when push comes to shove, action research is the success of it is often dependent on a few things. One, the level of support given teachers. Two, the ability of individuals to coach people through the process. And three, the supporting materials. Because the teachers who go into this, they're never the issue. Like any teacher we've had go through action research is passionate and strong and has a lot of these skills, but they just need some supporting materials. So we have ALA, as Angela said, was created first. Our Aspiring Leader Academy, it's monthly meetings. It used to just be admins focused for the first year, but then we started to pull in teacher leaders. And now, I guess, Angela, what's our current ALA? We have 15 people in teacher leader cohort. And do you know how many admins off the top of your head? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I think we had about 13, but then we also added in any new assistant principals and ASPs that hadn't gone through ALA this year. So they're up to closer to, I think, 40 people total.
Okay, Austin, thank you so much. So we have about 40 people meeting every month to do different work, and it's tracked work, which is awesome. So in the teacher leader track, we do action research isn't the only thing that we do, but it's definitely probably 70%, if not a little bit more of our time, because it lets us hit all of the teacher leader standards in practice rather than just learning about them through case studies or whatever. Like, so for example, part of the teacher leader standards is being a contributing member to learning communities and professional learning. So when people do action research, they are going to disseminate their findings and present. Well, it's a lot more authentic to have them actually doing this on a project they're passionate about rather than just saying, hey, what are the best practices when you're presenting at a faculty meeting? So we created the action research model. There's like so many different models. I actually know that, I think MERC has used some different models for action research. It's all basically, some way of like chopped and screwed scientific method. But we put it in these 5 stages because we found that after taking teachers and administrators through action research, with this 5 stage, it just works really well with the calendar of the school year. And I'll show you guys what that looks like. And then this was actually created in collaboration with VCU. We have a great partnership with MERC, but also we were able to partner up with the VCU Med with Sarah Mars, who's from the VCU School of Education, now working with VCU Med. And she does this with some of her doctoral students. So in health sciences. So we actually created this model together and supporting modules. You'll see it goes here. And again, different, even the books that we use don't always use these steps, but these are our Henrico steps. It's clarify the problem, research solutions. We implement change, we reflect and plan, and then we make sure we disseminate the findings. And obviously we put in a circle because it's an iterative process, right? And it really should have arrows going all the way back through. After we research solutions, our problem usually adapts. And as we're implementing change, we might need to go get more research to support it. But this is our model. And we use these sort of training materials. Again, it's adapted from Sager and Williams, but I think theirs is like a 7-step model. We just simplified it so it would kind of fit a calendar. And this is what our calendar looks like. So when we have our teacher leaders, we spend, like we said, we were meeting monthly, and we end up for action research. I guess we have about 2 hours to 2.5 hours on average once a month to work with these teachers, and then coaching in between. So usually for the first couple of months, they're clarifying the problem. Right now, when we're in the cycle, is where they're conducting research. We teach them, how to do literature reviews, annotated bibliographies. Then they're doing an intervention sometime in December and March, usually. Sometimes it starts a little earlier. Sometimes it bleeds a little later. And then in April and May, they're taking their findings, they're getting ready, and they present. And our presentations are really cool. During COVID, we did digital presentations, very similar to actually how we're doing MERC today. But in person, we've done poster fairs and where as the teachers go through their individual projects, we get the school leaders, like people from our central office. We invite some principals, we invite other teachers, and we do a fair where people can come around. And they also present at our conference. And in years past, and like this year, we even try to bring them into the MERC conference to share some of their research. But we do a full team presentation in May. As they go through this, they're working on teacher leader standards to actually get a designation on their license. So we're not just doing action research. They get a teacher leader designation on their license for VDOE. Angela, I don't mean to put you on the spot here again, but I mean, our desks are like 2 feet apart from each other and we work together every day. Do you mind, we didn't put in is talking just for a second about like what teacher leader designation for the state means, just really quick, because I feel like I'm looking at who's here right now and it's more people in higher ed and they might not be aware of this because I certainly was not until we started working together.
Sure. Yeah, I can just tell you, I think the best way to do it is just to kind of talk a little bit about what's available for the teacher leader standard. So just really quickly, teacher leaders are designated from the National Teacher Standards as fostering collaborative cultures, supporting learning for students and others, accessing research and improving practice, promoting professional learning for continuous improvement, facilitating improvements in instruction and student learning, using assessments and data for school and district improvement, providing outreach and collaboration with family and community, and then advocating for student learning and for the profession. And those pieces are not just from the State Department. These leadership standards were actually something that the Meta Group identified as being sort of the pathway to getting this teacher leader designation at the state level. The state allows for national board certified teachers to be part of that leadership process, but not the only qualifier to be a teacher leader, because they really want that other piece of not only are you a really strong teacher instructionally, but are you also able to serve and lead and facilitate learning for others? And so the completion of this work shows that they understand this process and how to support and share out and advocate for the findings that they have.
Yeah, thank you. Just such, I threw up the alley-oop and you just dunked it as always. So that's, I think one of the things that is good to know is that like actually Virginia teachers can get the certification on their license. Right now, it doesn't necessarily come with a pay bump, but it is something that teachers can have. So as they're applying for, different jobs or as they're advocating in the profession, is something they can have on their resume, which is, so anybody that completes our ALA teacher leader cohort that is really driven by action research, they get a teacher leader standard. They get a teacher leader certification. So we created a lot of different things. I mean, I think the success of action research, again, often comes down to, all right, cool, how do you guide people through this process? Yes, we do this with teacher leaders, but we also are taking, right now, we're taking about 25 assistant and associate principals through action research, some on their second or third cycle, others on their first. And then 2 years ago, we did the very ambitious thing where we took every assistant principal in Henrico through the action research cycle based on kind of what we had done here with ALA. We put modules in a Schoology course. We used the action research guidebook by Sager and Williams, and now we've been able to get copies to our people. That really helps. And then the modules kind of walk them through guiding questions. And the modules have really been helpful because they teach things that are difficult to do kind of in person. Teachers come in with varying understandings of how to, do data analysis. For some people, they know how to do a t-test. Other people, they haven't heard about it since, grad school or at all. Some people know how to conduct interviews. Other people need help with it. So the modules really help with that. Same thing with like literature reviews, but we do a lot of one-on-one coaching. We've even pulled in a third coach now, who is one of the graduates of our first program. And so we do a lot of, Angela and I will come in and have meetings and help people. And I think that's critical to the research process. And then they coach each other all the time. We use a lot of protocols kind of filling in with that project-based learning, approach that we're taking. And we bring in people like Jesse and team have come to talk to our folks before. We brought in people from U of R. We've had Sarah Mars from VCU Med who come in and talk to our teachers, especially with things like data analysis. And then what's been really helpful is offering up exemplars. So this is a project that we really like. Like this is one of the actual, okay, what are teachers creating? This is a study that one of our teachers did in her classroom to see if mindfulness techniques improve focus during math. And she had people come in and take data. She even ran statistical analyses and found that it did have a statistically significant impact. That when her students did a little bit of mindfulness work before math, they were on task more often. This one was really cool. This is where we were giving teacher efficacy scales to instructors before and after peer observations. And you can see here are the research questions here. And so these were actually, we printed these with physical posters. We have a poster printer, which is super helpful, and put these up, and we had division people coming around. And what was awesome is that dissemination of findings is also critical because who are the people that come to these fairs? It is our decision and policy makers at the local level. And this is why doing action research as a school division is really powerful, because we are not just guiding teachers through the process and telling them they should disseminate. We are getting them the audience for who can actually make a difference. So in this case, we had the math specialist was there as Abby was talking about these practices, and it could be incorporated in curriculum. So with that, we want you guys to see for yourself, and we're doing great with time. I'm going to pass it over to Amber and Melinda and Tiffany, and we're going to do something a little non-traditional in here because that's what we're about, is innovation. And we are going to put in, they have breakout rooms. We are going to ask to kind of come back together in 5 and let them kind of share out their work. So if you guys want to click on any of these 3 breakout rooms, you can kind of just pop in and we'll come back together at 55.
Melinda, are you able to get in? Okay.
Nice. So actually, pretty good job hacking the breakout groups. This platform's been awesome. That's just the one thing it didn't have. Again, normally, y'all, if we were in person, when we do this, we'll let people kind of go around. We've got time at Q&A to ask more questions, to let our amazing presenters talk a little bit more about what they've been doing. But let's now pass it off to our partners. So Jesse, we will go ahead and leave the moderation form and then let you guys in, and we'll pop back in for the Q&A.
All right. Thank you. That was great. You know, I'm a big fan of all your work. You guys are, I'm going to say this, you guys are leading the way in professional learning in the region. Go Henrico. Give a shout out. Got to give it due, you know.
All right. I had to come back and just do that.
Ooh, Eric. Yeah. Shots fired. Yep. Show us what you got. Okay. All right. Our team. Who are we missing here? Anybody else want to jump on? We got Rachel. Yay, Rachel. Erin. And then Alma and Victoria, if you want to jump on too, just hit that button at the top that says join. I think you can join. All right. Well, let's get going. Do you all want me to present the slides? Does it matter? Is that fine? Okay. I will present the slides. Okay. Yes. There we go. Okay, can everybody see my slides? I can't see anybody right now, so I'm trusting you can. All right, well, we're going to talk a little bit about our project, and you can see here, this is a research practice partnership project between VCU, MERC, and 2 districts, Henrico and Chesterfield. And you can see the folks that are going to be presenting today, and they are part of a larger team. This is the team that was involved in this 2-year grant-funded PD. You can see it includes the VCU team, which is both professors and graduate students, but also the equity departments from Chesterfield and Henrico, and then teams from 4 schools, 2 high schools, Monacan and Meadowbrook in Chesterfield, and then Quioccasin and Tuckahoe in Henrico. And so those are all the folks we were working with. And what we're going to do today is give a real quick introduction to the program and then talk about lessons learned, because this program went over the 2 years and we're kind of at the tail end of it now, where we're trying to reflect on how it went and all the things we learned along the way. And just to give you a little bit of background, the project, the title of our program is called Action Research Teams for Culturally Responsive Teaching. You'll hear people talk about it as Art Crit or Art Cart. I'm on the Art Crit team, but either way. And this project really emerged out of a prior MERC study that was commissioned by the MERC Policy and Planning Council, which is made up of our kind of regional school leaders. And they were really interested in how we prepare teachers for increasing diversity within our schools, especially considering the gap between a mostly white teaching force and an increasingly diverse student population. How do we prepare teachers through professional development for that? And the project had a couple phases. It included a mapping project we did where we looked at trends in diversity across the region. It included a literature review of best practices in PD in this area, and also a survey that we put out to all the teachers, asking them about their experiences of professional development and their own sense of their own self-efficacy in multicultural education. And then the third part of the program was a action research component where we worked with 8 teachers across the region on a year-long program and had them reflect on the intersections of cultural diversity and their professional practice, and they all conducted action research projects, which, you know, Drew talked about a little bit, but this was sort of the model that we use, where you develop a plan, you take an action, you monitor by collecting evidence, you reflect, and then you disseminate. And then that leads into a second cycle and then to a third cycle. And this is kind of an ongoing iterative process. And the idea is that this is about continuous improvement, about trying to become a better teacher, about trying to affect better outcomes in your classrooms and in your school. And so this was a great project. You can see one of our action researchers, Salita Wilson from Hanover County, presenting with a poster. And this was, I don't know, back in 2017 maybe, or 18. And then from that, we applied for a grant with the Institute for Education Sciences, which is a part of the U.S. Department of Education. And we're in collaboration with Henrico and Chesterfield, and we're awarded a researcher practitioner partnership grant. And to expand this program and to do the cohorts across the 4 schools and to really kind of study the model and see how it worked, with a real focus on culturally responsive teaching. And so this was the initial flyer that we put out to recruit teachers for this project. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Fantasy to tell you a little bit more about the program.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Fantasy Lozada in psychology and one of the PIs on this project that I'm really excited to tell you about kind of what it is that we did exactly across the 2 years. So in our action research teams for culturally responsive teaching, I'm on the art cart team. And so we started off each year in kind of getting our teachers together and doing a summer workshop. And in this summer workshop, our goals were really to try to orient our teachers to this process of action research and really empower them to understand that this sort of this process in which they're sort of asking some questions about their practices or reflecting on their practices and kind of seeing like what works, that's something that's pretty natural to what they do as educators pretty generally in the classroom, and trying to understand, like, what am I doing? Is it effective? How are my students receiving it? And so kind of just trying to empower them in that and give them the tools to think through, like, how am I going to systematically use this research process to learn about what I'm doing and learn about how to improve it and learn about, what are the outcomes all along for my students. So we did a bit of action research training during the summer workshops, but we also did a little bit of training in thinking about what is culture and what is culturally responsive teaching, and trying to lay a framework and a foundation for our teachers in interrogating themselves, asking a little bit around their identities and their lived experiences and sort of what it is that they're bringing into the classrooms, but also how they're viewing their classrooms and their students, and where their students come from, their background, and what are strengths there, what are challenges, and all of that. We also, in that summer workshop, and especially this first year, I'm going to jump down to the bottom part where we say we have the student voice piece. We had students who we recruited from the participating schools that we had teachers from, who served in a way as sort of youth voice and giving teachers some insight into what do students think about culturally responsive teaching. And so we work with the Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities, and they worked with youth over 2 days of the summer workshop or a few days of the summer workshop to ask students those types of questions, and then to put together a video that students kind of talked about how they felt when teachers engaged in practices that really reflected their identities, or maybe their desires to see more talk about culture, more talk about their identities and lived experiences in the classroom. And then these were all things that were a part of the summer workshop to kind of kick teachers off and being prepared to then engage in throughout the year 4 research cycles throughout the year. Now, keep in mind, this was a 2-year program. So each year we started with that summer workshop, and then each year our teachers went through the 4 research cycles. And at the end of each year, we also held an end of year event in which our teachers were getting to showcase the work that they had done all along, what they had learned, what they were excited to learn about next, the things that worked well, the things that didn't, and really just celebrate all of the growth that they had seen in themselves and all of the things that they were getting ready to do in the next year. We also throughout the year had these network meetings. We had teacher leads at each of the schools. So these are teachers who kind of stepped up to be leaders of their peers. And they were part of these network meetings where they were kind of giving us feedback about like, what was this process like? And what is it that their teams are needing? And, what are some issues that they're particularly tackling? Also at those network meetings were other school leadership who were a part. We really wanted to also just empower and encourage school leadership to really be supportive of teachers during this action research process. So they were an integral part of the network meetings as well. And just to give you a little context overall in general, of course, our project happened during the context of COVID, right? And so year one, sort of this went almost, it was starting to go as planned during that first semester. And then when the spring of 2020 hit, then we were all online and just trying to support our teachers and making that transition in every way possible. So just keep that big picture in mind as you hear from us more today about our project. So here's just a few pictures. These were our educators at the summer workshop in 2019 when we got to be all in person, kind of sitting around in groups and in teams, some by school, some mixing it up at some point, kind of putting our heads together and talking about culturally responsive teaching. We also had teachers kind of put together their plan for their first cycle during that summer workshop, and then present that out at the end of the summer workshop. And what was cool about them being able to present that out was they were not only presenting to their teacher peers, but they're also presenting to the students who have come to be a part of the student voice component as well. Students were also sharing some of their activities that they had done during that summer workshop, sharing that out again with teachers and the school leadership who were in attendance. And then, yes, this is the screenshots from the video that students participated in, kind of giving teachers an insight into what it was they wanted to see in their classrooms. This was a really impactful moment for teachers, especially. And then here's just a little snapshot of our action research cycles with teachers, and those things kind of evolved. The presentations at the end evolved, but just as Jesse showed in the depiction, teachers started off by developing a cycle action plan. We had a template that they would go in and answer some questions about what kind of change, what kind of practice of culturally responsive teaching they wanted to investigate in their classrooms for themselves. What was their plan in being able to investigate that practice? What were some of the surveys they were going to use or instruments that we're going to use? Then they, after getting feedback on those cycle plans from their peers and also from us as the facilitators and the research team, then they put those plans into place and they collected data through a variety of ways. Sometimes it was surveys, sometimes it was interviews, sometimes it was observation. Our teachers really got very creative in how they were thinking about like, what kind of data is around in my classroom? What am I going to look at to understand how there might be change in my students based off of what I do? Then they presented on that. When we were in person, they presented in our cycle meetings at the end of each cycle. And then when we were online, they started to put together these virtual presentations. And then they developed their next cycle action plan based off of what it was they learned in the previous cycle, things that they wanted to do better, things that they wanted to change, or things they wanted to build on. So this is also just showing, so that this is kind of getting into some of the things that we did into year two when we were all virtual. And what we ended up doing was we put together a website then to start to try to showcase what it was that we were learning from our action research. So things that we learned from the students in terms of student voices. So we have artifacts there, but then also we did these really cool podcasts that really allowed teachers to talk through what it was they were learning and what kind of advice that they're having for other teachers who want to embark on culturally responsive teaching as a journey. And we're going to hear about what some of the teachers have said throughout the process through some of our colleagues, but we want to kind of call attention to, and I think we're going to drop some links at some point regarding this website and our podcasts.
All right. So how are we thinking about culturally responsive teaching? Oh, by the way, I'm Hillary Parkhouse. I'm faculty in the School of Education. I didn't introduce myself. Thanks everyone for coming. So we worked closely because this was a research practice partnership with Henrico and Chesterfield, our co-PIs on the study, who were the equity directors in both school districts. And Henrico, Chesterfield had been using Zaretta Hammond book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. And Henrico had created a culturally responsive education model called the CRIM model that maps onto both the James Banks multicultural education 5 pillars that you see there, and also the Henrico learner profile. And so if you go on to the next slide, so we kind of pulled from both, and the next slide, Jesse, the Zaretta Hammond, the multicultural education model, and also Gloria Ladson-Billings' foundational work in culturally relevant pedagogy and Paulo Freire critical pedagogy. And so pulling all that together, the framework we used emphasizes drawing on students' funds of knowledge and lived experiences to make the curriculum more meaningful, but also prompts teachers, as Fantasy was saying, to critically examine their own positionality in terms of race, gender, class, language, and other dimensions of identity in relation to both their students and to larger social structures. So promoting the idea that culturally responsive teachers view knowledge critically and help their students do the same, and understanding that to pursue educational equity, the work they do within their classrooms must be part of efforts to address oppression in the larger society. And the next slide is a screenshot from the same website that Fantasy was showing you. So you can check out these links to all the evidence for the impacts of culturally responsive teaching on students, both academic outcomes and social emotional learning outcomes. So we'll now share some of the lessons that we learned now reflecting back on the 2 years and starting to dig into some of the interview data and other data we collected. And so our first lesson is Elizabeth Severson-Irby is going to share.
Thanks, Hillary. So as you just heard Hillary say about having the teachers really reflect on their own identity. So this idea of a reflective practitioner came up, and the cyclical nature of action research, of posing questions and collecting and analyzing data, really allowed them to have dedicated time and space for reflection. One of the teachers noted that action research requires you to be critical of your own practice. And then another noted that they became a reflexive practitioner. But in addition to just being critical of their own instructional practices, many teachers stated that this project allowed them the space to reflect on their own identity and their positionality and how it affects the way they interact with students. And the example on the screen here really shows how one teacher interrogated their implicit bias and how this bias was impacting the ways that they were potentially interacting with various groups of students. So this constant reflexivity allowed them to uncover their implicit bias and to provide a more critical look at their overall teaching practices to ensure that they were serving students more equitably. So I'll pass it to the next one, which I think goes back to Hillary in the virtual classroom.
Yeah, so another really interesting lesson learned, because the project coincided with the pandemic, is that although, of course, the pandemic introduced enormous challenges for teachers, both in general, but also specifically with culturally responsive teaching and connecting with students and continuing to build those relationships. The participants shared there actually were some silver linings, and in some ways, their culturally responsive teaching helped them be more effective in virtual instruction, and virtual instruction helped them be more culturally responsive educators. So one piece of that was that having to go online drove home the importance of making the content relevant in order to keep students engaged, and made them realize that culturally responsive teaching was more urgently needed than ever. And this quote from one participant illustrates that they said shutting down with COVID, I really started to think about how I might have to change. I might have to. It's not like we can't teach Shakespeare anymore. We can't talk about Beowulf, but I need to change something in order to reach more students. So I thought that was interesting too, that it wasn't just about changing my practices, but the person said, I might have to change. And then other participants shared that the virtual instruction actually allowed them to learn more about their students' home lives, and that allowed them to be more culturally responsive as well. One shared that I'm interacting with the family now, not just the student. Like I had a mom in the video, had a sister come in almost every day and say hi to the class. So you're definitely thinking more about who is this student? Who are you? Who's your family? What's the culture of your household? Do you go to work with your parents? Do you work? Do you take care of all your siblings? And that's why you're virtual instead of coming in person. And then the final silver lining around virtual instruction was that having foundations of culture responsive teaching helped them be more successful because they already had devoted so much effort to developing strong relationships with students that then became crucial as they drew on those to foster engagement in online conversations. And now I will pass it over to Erin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin, and I am a PhD student in the School of Education. I am Hillary's GA, so I've been coding a lot of this data, the interview data. Another universal lesson that we saw for our participants captured through this process is the importance of unlearning whiteness as a norm and standard in our society. We found it was pivotal for our participants, particularly our white participants, to really interrogate their privilege and to reflect upon previous held beliefs surrounding race, ethnicity, and culture. This introspection process can be seen on our slide here from one of our participants. They said, I've had to think of myself too, like what culture do I have? What is my culture? Because that's something we started reading, a young adult book about racism and how to be an anti-racist. I'm never asked where I'm from because I'm white. I can't imagine someone constantly being asked, oh, where are you from? But really what they're asking is, what's your race? What's your ethnicity? And no one asked that of me. So I'm thinking, do I even have a culture? What would I consider my culture? That's something I'm still thinking through. So speaking to this point that it is a ongoing process, this process is not linear, it's changing and evolving. And this is a concept that will be explored further in our next slide.
There you go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rachel, and I'm a PhD student in the psychology department. But another lesson that we've seen is this idea of inspiring curiosity and continue learning. So in the action research trainings, we gave the teachers really the tools that they needed to learn how to become action researchers and culturally responsive teachers. And one of the things that we are seeing is that through the process of this training, the teachers, they really began to seek out additional resources other than the ones that were provided to them. So one of the teachers stated, but really, I think that culturally responsive teaching is one of those things that once you open the door, once I read one book, there's 10 other books I want to read now. And then once I read one of those, now there's 10 more. And so continuing to do that and continuing to learn and just diving deeper and deeper and deeper into it, that's what really made me become a culturally responsive educator. And so we've seen that that the teachers, that they really were interested in diving deeper into this idea of culturally responsive teaching and how does this really play a role and what will this really look like. So some additional things that they did was form book studies so that they can come together and read books and read things beyond, get information beyond the trainings. Some of the books that participants talked about was Matthew Kay's Not Light But Fire and A New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robyn Lynn, and I'm a student with the School of Education at VCU. With Virginia codifying equity initiatives that impact teacher licensing, this research project is pivotal to understanding teachers' experiences when becoming culturally competent when they're integrating culturally responsive education into their practice. So instead of a one and done type of PD, an action research CRE PD is multiple learning experiences, and the learning is never done. Our findings indicate there are lifelong impacts for the participants, both professionally and personally. So professionally, CRE PD creates a lifelong equity consciousness that impacts relationships with students, colleagues, and within their own teaching practice. So some thoughts that participants shared were, I think this whole experience has given me more insight into student families. They may still be supporting their child's education, but just because they're not responding, that doesn't mean they don't care. There are teachers that are pull yourself up by your bootstraps type teachers, work hard, get what you deserve. I don't think that they understand some of the historical background that has caused these students to be in the situation they're in. And of course, for their practice, we're continuing our research outside of what MERC has given us. MERC really gave us an understanding, and now it's time for us to carry it forward and to continue the research. So it's ongoing, it's lifelong. Personally, this PD creates equity consciousness, resulting in lifelong substantive changes to their own identities and an awareness and passion for sharing with other teachers. So a couple of things that they have said, I came from knowing nothing about CRE, culturally responsive education. So my understanding now is that it's a way of life. It's not just a way of education or teaching. I'm a different person. And this has been such an enlightening experience that I wish every teacher would go through this PD. So I think it's inherent upon us to be able to give these type of experiences to teachers to help bring equity into the classroom and into the schools. And with Virginia being on the leadership end of equity within school districts, I think that this is an exciting, these are exciting findings. And back to Jesse.
And I'm going to just skip ahead this slide. And what I was going to say is just that administration support by administration and systems for this work is very important. But I want to move over to reflections from the two of our action researchers. Alma and Victoria are on the call with us here. And I just would maybe ask them to just say a couple of reflections on their experiences. So we'll start with Alma.
Hi there, my name is Alma Kennup. I'm an English teacher at Quioccasin Middle School, and I also served as the teacher leader for the group of action researchers at our campus. And one of our greatest takeaways is the fact that relationships are everything. So similar to what Robyn Lynn said, like the revelation to us that even though it seems like we are insular when we are in our classrooms with our own students, in fact, what happens in our classroom and in the larger education community is something that impacts everybody. And so in reflecting on what data shows us about inequities in our school, we have sought help from local universities aside from VCU to help us take a look at our grading and how it can be more equitable. We did a book study on grading for equity. We have also sought the advice from Matthew Kay. We did the book study on Not Light But Fire, and he attended one of our sessions. In addition to just our group of researchers, our administrators were really on board on the book study and joined us as well. And so just realizing that this work has greater ramifications than just what happens in our classroom was important. And we're working now to address some of those inequities that we've identified. The other thing that has been really important in the classroom from action research is revisiting that creating relationships is a constant commitment, and also that student voice piece, getting their opinion and their reflections on what's working for them in the classroom or not is something that should be ongoing. Before participating in this action research, it was something I only looked to retrieve from them at the end of the year. Like, how was my teaching? And then I realized that only benefited the next group of students. Instead, now I seek their feedback often, about twice a quarter, on how learning is going, how their personal goals in the classroom is going. So that spirit of action research is something that has stayed with me and will continue.
And Victoria.
Hi, my name is Victoria Parent, and I'm an English teacher at Monacan High School. I will say I am at school, so I might have to mute if a bell goes off. There are no students here today, but the class bells are still ringing. And I was so lucky to get to join the Art Crit team. I'm on that team of pronunciation for the second year. And some of my research was focused on how to increase student feelings of belonging through culturally responsive curriculum and culturally responsive teaching strategies. My focus was looking at students of color in honors level classes, which we know are underrepresented students thanks to some great MERC research as well. And what was just so powerful to take away from my research was to piggyback off of what Alma has said is, you know, this work really does lead to stronger relationships with students and within peer relationships with students as well. Something so interesting from my research was learning about how aware students were of racial tension, of cultural tension that exists in the classroom. And I found through culturally responsive teaching practices, it repaired some of the tension it caused students to reconcile where there might have been previous harm. And from a teacher perspective, I became closer with my students. They came to see me as both an ally and an advocate in how I was doing this work, which has led to some really cool impacts at our school. Students came to me when they witnessed some injustice and inequity at school, which has led to a new equity team that is made up of administrators, teachers, and students here at Monacan that meets monthly to review school practices, do various educations. And I feel like a lot of this came from actively fostering critical consciousness. So there were these implications beyond the classroom and beyond academic performance that is now hopefully going to create sustainable positive impact in our school community. And then, of course, it also just strengthened student participation and student academic success when students felt like they belonged in the classroom and like that they were connected with their peers. I saw more students speaking up and participating, and grades improved as well. So it was really awesome to see both this academic, social, and community impact through my research. And then just a final reflection is that it's just so important to have a community of educators to work with. Alma and I are in different counties, but, I'm so inspired by the work that she does. And it's so important to hold ourselves accountable to continuing this work as we move forward. So it was just a great experience and so happy to have the tools and the insights that I do now.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. We're just about out of time. We only have 1 minute left. There's also a video. I really encourage you to check out our website. And there's some links that we can post in the chat. And please feel free to message us if you have any questions, additional questions. We'd love to talk about our work. We love to talk about it. It's super interesting to us. And hopefully we'll be getting more information out about our project as we dig more into the analysis. And I wish we had more time to talk about the connections between these presentations, because I think the idea of action research as a tool for school improvement and systems improvement is really, there's so much potential there that needs to be explored. And so I hope that we can keep this movement going. Because when I first came to VCU and came into Richmond, there wasn't a lot of action research. I didn't really know much at all that was going on. And now there seems to be a lot of efforts, and that's really exciting. So, but thank you, everybody. I think the next session opens in 10 minutes. So run to the next room.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Later, y'all.
Yep. Bye, y'all.